everyone. Welcome to Achieving Success with Olivia Akin. I'm your host, Olivia Akin. Each week, we will discuss the roadmap of achieving your personal and professional success. We give you real-life stories on growing personally and professionally to achieve your life and career goals with the help of some top-notch guests. Today, we are speaking with actor Ryan Robbins. Ryan is a multi-talented actor, creator, and storyteller whose journey from small-town Canada to international screens is a testament of persistence, curiosity, and artistic evolution. Born and raised in Victoria, British Columbia, Ryan began his creative path early, writing, producing, and performing in school, then performing professionally in a touring circus in Australia, before discovering his path in acting and filmmaking. Over more than 2 decades, Ryan has built a dynamic, award-winning career across film and television. You may know him from leading the recent Sniper franchise films for Sony, reoccurring on hit series like Riverdale on the CW, Pure on CBC and Hulu, and guest roles on The Good Doctor, Snowpiercer, Arrow, and Battlestar Galactica, and many, many others. He also has upcoming appearances in Netflix, Little House on the Prairie reboot. And beyond acting, Ryan is a songwriter, martial artist, bladesmith, and endless curious creator, someone who turned artistic exploration into a lifelong journey. And today we'll unpack his evolution, his creative philosophy, and what it really takes to thrive as a versatile performer in today's entertainment landscape. Hello, Ryan. It's fantastic having you on the show.
Hi, that's a lot.
I mean, we got to highlight all the amazing things you do.
Yeah, I guess I've been around a minute. Damn. It's really nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
To start off the show, can you tell me what success means and looks like to Ryan Robbins?
It's a very good question. I think I can tell you what it feels like. I think success should feel like you haven't had to sacrifice or compromise too much. I am constantly uh, striving for better. I am not somebody who's easily content. I find that there's a fine line between content and complacent, and I never want to be complacent, and I never want to be ungrateful. The problem is, it makes me really uh, ultra motivated to succeed, and if I would try to succeed in many aspects of life, and part of that needs to be letting go of perfection, right? And I think there's a level of success that has to be letting go of this illusion of perfection. And I think that's something that I'm learning more and more as I get older. So that I think that would be a key takeaway for me when it comes to success, is to let go of that need to be perfect, and just that I strive to learn and at all times. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. And it actually reminded me of a book I'm actually reading right now about the gap and the gains in our life. Um, and it's about how so many of us look at things like you said, perfectionism or other people's measure of success. And we're always in this gap mindset of trying to strive towards what others want instead of striving towards what we want and looking at things of like how far we've actually come and moved the needle to get to our goals and accomplish those things. So as you were saying that, I'm like, this reminds me of literally what I'm reading right now about your own mindset and how you view success more internally and towards your own goals and your own metrics than what other people are deeming those success metrics are.
Absolutely. I think we've become such a competitive and comparative society that, like, we for some reason everything is a competition. Everything feels like it's a sporting event, but we also become really comparative, with social media, and it used to be magazines, and now it's social media, where you're constantly finding yourself comparing yourself to someone else's success or someone else's life or someone else's
Mhm.
appearance. And I think that's a really slippery slope. You list all these things that I do. Well, I'm not particularly great at any of them. I'm just obsessed with the learning, right? Like music, I'm never going to be a perfect musician. But I love playing music, making knives, same. Like I'm not that great. I can do it and but I like learning new techniques. It just
Mhm.
keeps me motivated.
And I want to touch upon, since you just brought it up, I want to touch upon what got you into making knives because that doesn't typically come up that often. And as my boyfriend who is in the US Coast Guard, he's a chief in the US Coast Guard. He has all these blade sharpening tools and this and that.
Mhm.
And I look at it and you talk to a lot of people and they're like, how do you do that? Like, what do you get? Like you don't hear as many people talk about bladesmith anymore, especially because it's looked at, I guess, as a trade or something that was passed down a skill set passed down generationally. And, so what got you into that?
Well, I come from a military family, and my grandfather never threw anything away. He would repurpose and recycle, and he would just fix the problems, and it got me, I own a custom motorcycle shop in my little town up here. And so I have the shop and I have the space, and we had all this a bin full of metal. We call it the tetanus bin. And I realized some of that metal could be, instead of recycling it or chucking it out, I could actually make that into something. And I love turning some piece of trash into like working functional art. Someone brings us an old motorcycle that they're just willing to just give up on and send to the scrapyard, and we can turn it around and make it an award-winning rolling riding piece of art. And it's the same thing with knives. You pull an old leaf spring off a truck that is going for scrap, and that leaf spring makes 4 or 5 amazing knives. You just have to have the patience and the time. And I don't use big power tools, so everything I do is just hand hammer. And there's something really meditative and therapeutic about that. And in the end, I've taken this scrap rusty piece of crap metal and I've made it into this beautiful, functional piece of art. And then I can just give it to a friend or whatever. I don't sell them. I usually just give them away, or I'll make it I made a knife for my character on Little House on the Prairie. I made a period correct, homesteader knife out of a railway spike. And I like doing that. And I like making knives for characters I play, whether they're ever seen or not. It's just something I can do to get into the mindset of the character.
There's quite a few things I want to touch on there. I'm like, my mind could go into so many directions. One is my boyfriend will love hearing this because he's a chief engineer in the Coast Guard. So
Mm.
he loves working on cars. He loves working on, boats and the engines and all these little things and creating things out of pieces that a lot of people think, oh, that has to be scrapped. It's like, no. And he tells me all the time, he's like, okay, well, we have springs in the truck that we just replaced. And instead of just immediately tossing them, they've been sitting in our garage. And he's like, okay, what can we create out of this? I'm like, what do you mean? What do we create out of this? Like, how can we reuse this? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what we can do with them. But it's really interesting to see, especially when you're touching something, molding it into whether it's a car, a motorcycle, a knife, how that idea and like how you can use certain pieces, even if others seem to be like, oh no, we need to discard these, and putting them into something and creating something from the ground up is like
I'm going to
so
give your boyfriend a challenge. Take that spring, that coiled spring,
cool.
polish it up, clean it up, weld a base to it, turn it into a lamp.
I mean, tell them that.
Industrial lamp. I'm telling you, I've seen them. They look amazing. You can even just go on Etsy and find them, and people sell those things for a gajillion dollars. It's just a spring polished, weld a base to it, and you can just wire up and turn into a lamp. And they look really, really cool. They look like these really cool industrial sort of steampunk like lamps.
Yeah,
Easy
that's like
done.
I feel like on Etsy people sell so much. Like I got into and I made for a lot of our families and friends the past 2 years these like hand looped blankets. It was a way for me to like craft and also just like give a nice gift to someone. And someone was like, you should sell these. And I'm like, okay, how much would that even go for? And I like go on Etsy and they're like $400. I'm like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. And people pay it. It's
People
crazy.
do. So tell me, and now going back a little bit, the other thing I wanted to bring up that I thought was really interesting that you mentioned is that you create knives for characters you play, whether they show up in the show or not. What drives you to add that piece of art into what is being created and people are seeing? And what are those conversations, if there are conversations, like, I want this piece on set with me and it's part of my character?
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I usually, I'll talk to the props department and I'll run it by the showrunner, the director, just, just say, look, I've just made this. Here's the, like on Little House, I was like, well, I made this knife for this character when I was doing my research. Because part of what I do as an actor that I love is I love the research. I love the prep for certain characters. So I just made it. I didn't ask if I could. I just made it. And then I brought it with me to my wardrobe fitting. And I said, I made this. What do you guys think? And I made sure, it wasn't sharp. So I wasn't going to cut anybody. It just looked sharp. And everybody responded really positively. They loved it. And the wardrobe department went to the props department. They made a period correct sheet for it, and they're like, "This is going on your wardrobe. It's going to be on your leg the entire shoot." And it was. I never pull it out because it's Little House on the Prairie. It's not like a violent show, but it sits on my leg for the duration of the show. Whenever you see my character, I know it's there. And in between takes, when I'm just sitting, I can pull that knife out and just stay in character and think about that time period and think about, it didn't it, the hardest part about that knife for me is not making it pretty because it wouldn't be. It would be just a functional blade for
Mhm.
hunting or cooking or whatever. So like a multi-purpose functional blade. So that was a fun challenge and try to do it the way they would have done it back then, which was that was an extra challenge just to get in the headspace. I
And
like doing stuff like that.
what is it like as well, like mentally, once whatever set it might be that says, like, yes, we're going to use this, and then, the movie comes to life, the show comes to life, and something you envisioned that wasn't, necessarily a prop that was put in originally and you created, now will also live on that screen with you. And then I'm assuming you get to take it when you're done, but correct me if I'm
I
wrong.
kept it. Yeah, I have it. I do have it. I should have brought it here, but I showed it to you. It's just in another room, but I almost want to go grab it. But I do like that little Easter egg, and no one will know. No one would know that I made it. I think one of my favorite Easter eggs isn't actually like a knife. I in one of the sniper movies. They wanted to use a song, but we couldn't get the rights to the song. But I knew the song was a public domain song, so I said, "Well, why don't we just make an arrangement like this?" And I just sent it. I played it and sent it to them. Fast forward to the movie comes out, and by that point, I'd recorded the song, and it's me singing this song over footage of me preparing to go to battle, and nobody knew. Like the audience doesn't know, the crew didn't know when we did the screening. Nobody knew that that's me singing while I'm also playing this actor. We're playing this character in the movie. Like all those Easter eggs are super fun for me. I love doing that stuff. Whether it's a knife or a song or whatever, or an ability, a skill set that I have because I've had this crazy life. I've
What
gone
made,
from
oh, sorry, continue.
no, I just because I've been a musician. I've been a circus performer. I've been a fighter. I've had all these iterations of myself in my life, and so these skill sets, whenever I get a chance to bring them to a character, it's super fun, it's super satisfying. It's why I always want to learn new things because
Mhm.
I can always bring those skills to a character.
And that being said, you just touched upon it too, is always learning new things and being able to bring it to a character. But when did you first start to realize that your drive for learning and continuous learning was one of your driving factors for your internal growth? Because so many people, especially in today's society, go, okay, this is the list of things I have to do to hit this goal or, get here. And it's like checking boxes. But, I full-heartedly believe like one of our greatest gifts in life is being able to learn and continuously pick up skills, and we have that power. No one can take that away from us, just like our voice. And so for me, like, I'm always like, okay, how does that work? How do we put these things together? What do I need to know? And sometimes people say to me, Olivia, you slowed down your progress. And, I recently had a conversation. I was like, they pitched an idea to me, and I'm thinking in my head in real time, okay, how is that going to work? What are the potential problems? How do we, fix those problems beforehand? And I said, okay, a lot's going on. Let's revisit this in 2 weeks and this and that. And he's like, Olivia, you slow down your progress. And I go, I'm not slowing down my progress. I'm going to understand every piece of it. So then when it goes to release or we do whatever we want to do with it, it is impactful. It is done right. And I can understand the flow. You don't have to be a master of it. You need to understand it. So for you, like, was there an initial point in your life where you started to realize it isn't just about the checklist and I want to keep learning and I want to always be learning different skills?
I think it was late. I think it was a little later than I would have liked. I when I was younger, I was um quite insecure and I lacked confidence and I was afraid to try something new because I hated sucking at things. If I did something and I immediately, you know, had a sense of how to do it, like an aptitude, a propensity for doing it well immediately, I would stick with it. But if I sucked at it, like golf, for example, I don't golf because I suck at golf and I don't like sucking at things. I like learning something, but when there's so many people around, it's
Yeah.
hard. Um, I would say martial arts was probably the first thing that like I had to be bad at and allow myself to suck in order to learn. But that's an environment where you kind of are encouraged to and you have to suck in front of other people when you're doing martial arts. Music, I could suck by myself and no, I didn't have to show anybody and I could learn and grow by myself. Um, so that was one. But then when had an ability, then I was too afraid to share it because what if people don't like it? And then you just have to take that step and be like, screw it. I'm going to give it a shot. I think it's good. I'm going to give it a shot. And then slowly I started to build the confidence. And then when I became a father, when my first daughter was born, I had this like, okay, everything's about my kid. Slow all the silliness down. Focus on your daughter. My father wasn't around, so I didn't want to be like my father. So I focused really hard. And then I just was obsessed about trying to be a good father. And it got really convoluted and things didn't work out with her mom. And then I remember having this epiphany like, how do I teach my daughter to chase her dreams if I use her as an excuse not to chase my own? There's got to be a balance here. And that was like a switch for me. And then that just sort of became a driving force for everything. Is like, I want to show my kids that like you can always improve. You can always strive to learn something new. You can always like be brave enough to try something. Just give it a try it. If it's not for you, it's not for you, but you won't know if you don't try it. Um, all my instruments around my house, like my kids have always had full access. I'm not precious about anything. It's like, you want to play with one of my guitars, just go play. You want to play the piano, go play the piano. Get on the drums, get on the drums. Like I don't stop them from doing that stuff. And consequently I have these amazingly creative daughters, and I'm super,
Mhm.
super proud of my kids. I didn't have that encouragement growing up. I had to learn that as an adult. And now I feel like because as you get older, you start to realize, the window of time is starting to close, and you think, geez, maybe I have less time ahead of me than I have behind me. I don't know. And so I'm more and more determined than ever to just keep growing, keep improving, keep
Mhm.
learning, and keep developing new skill sets to just to stay like sharp. And, you know, my grandfather, he never stopped learning. He never stopped doing. And he lived to be 95 years old. The only reason he died is because my grandmother died. He was just, he didn't want to be in the world without her, you know, but he had his wits about him till damn near the very end. And he's my hero. So, yeah, I just want to, yeah, I'd love to grow and learn and improve and just, it's so motivating for me.
And talking about motivation, you led me right into the question I was going to ask, which I love.
Natural segue.
Here we go. Is what motivates you? You know, in life, we get so busy sometimes. We have so many moving pieces. As you mentioned, you're a father. So being a father and being present and on these television and movie sets and being present there. When life gets busy, when you get to a point where your cup is filled, how do you keep the motivation to stay in the space of learning and growing?
Oh man, that's a really good question. You know, I think the funny answer is money. You know, it's just like I need to make money to live. I need to make money to feed my kids, and um, so you there's always that sort of financial motivation, but that's a bit more disingenuous, isn't it? I think like motivation is it on those down days. You know, we all struggle with our own issues, and there are days where getting out of bed is hard. Um, but I have these routine. I get out of bed. I make my bed every day. Um, I think that's partly coming from a military family background, but also I've accomplished the task immediately. I get up, I make my bed, task accomplished, and there's small victories.
Hmm.
The next one is maybe I have my coffee, but I'm not going to just have my coffee on the run. I give myself enough time in the morning to sit, have a coffee, check some emails, don't rush into my day. And it's another small victory. And I find for me, recognizing the small victories throughout the day becomes motivating because it becomes like the feeling of success, of achieving something just seemingly small and insignificant. Because when I get home at the end of the day after a hard day at work, my home is clean, my bed is made, my dishes are done, and I don't have to worry that I'm coming home to a bunch of stuff I got to do because I did it. And now I can just come home and relax at the end of the day. Like those little things for me personally are really, really important, you know? And when I don't do those things, I notice and I feel when my environment is messy, my mental health is messy. Um, and I need to make sure that I do the best I can at keeping my mental health as clean as I can. And those are tools that I've learned that just help me. They're good for me. They may not be good for everybody else, but they are definitely tools of success for me.
And I love that you say that as well, because I think so many times we get in this mix of a human eh, doing instead of a human being. And it's like, okay, just here's the things I have to get done today. Just again, going back to the checklist and crossing them off the list and just always in motion instead of being present. And that is one thing I also heard you really emphasize in sharing those tasks and sharing how you go through the day is like being present. And is it, present being doing that thing, right? Making your bed and then sitting with your cup of coffee and saying, okay, I'm having a few minutes here and this is how I'm consciously starting my day, but also being present and knowing, okay, I know that if I just put off, cleaning, doing the laundry, all these things, I'm gonna come home later and everything's gonna be a mess, and then I'm gonna be more stressed than just knocking it out now. And then later, I could come home and do the activities I want to do and know that door's closed. I don't have to think about it and do these things instead.
It's true. Like, look, life is a pressure cooker now, arguably more than it's ever been. Right? We are under so much pressure. just so much pressure to achieve and to do all these things, and the rewards for those achievements are less than they've ever been, but the pressure seems higher. And for me, if I can alleviate some of that pressure by getting it done immediately, I find I feel pressure more towards the end of the day. If I want to be able to rest, which is so important, and it's something that none of us do very well anymore. We don't relax. I don't sit still well. I mean, clearly you just read all the things that I do. I don't sit still well, and I don't sleep particularly well. So I have to do everything I can to calm this and to calm this so that I can rest this,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the way the world is right now, not to be like, I'm not a doom and gloom guy, but it's a bit of a dumpster fire, and it's definitely a pressure cooker. But it sounds super cliche, but pressure can make diamonds. If you just we're we got to figure out how to support one another, which is what drew me to your podcast when I got the invite, and I looked at what you were doing, and I was like, see, I want to contribute. I want to participate in something like this, because I think what you're doing is helping others I mean, it's achieving success, but it's also like, achieving sort of an inner sense of well-being, right? So, which is success.
Mm-hmm. And that's really why I started my podcast, was whether it was working in professional sports or for in corporate at Lockheed Martin or teaching. A lot of my, which we kind of touched upon earlier, my idea of continuously learning. What is the harm in learning or getting this certification? What's the harm in exploring this avenue, even if it doesn't have to do with my career or where I am today? Because you never know what life brings up, how you might pivot, what what changes you, right? Like you brought up your daughter changed your perspective and how you approach things. And the one constant thing we have in life is change. So why not celebrate that? Why not celebrate what makes us all unique? And that idea, along with we all have stories, we all have journeys, no one has an a list of moments. We all have those things that define us and create who we are and how we show up. So instead of making it seem like we have to be this person to be successful and hide all the things that make us who we are and make us what we deem successful, let's pull the curtain back on it. Let's share that. Let's share and make people know it is okay. These are what life is about. This is what we all go through. And if one person walks away from one episode, and luckily and so thankfully have had so many people reach out and say this has truly helped my perspective, or this got me out of this dark space, then I've accomplished it. And that's what keeps me driving with every single episode and every single guest is like, let's make one person realize today that they are on the right path. They are on their path and they're not alone, because we all go through life.
Yeah, and I think also, this might be a bit of a polarizing comment, but we have to stop making excuses to change. You hear all the time, I'm too old to change. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, or I don't have time to do the things. And it's just like, okay, but that also sounds like an excuse. It's
Mhm.
if you tell me like you want to change and you want to do something, then I'm going to challenge you to find a way to do it. Carve out 10 minutes a
Mhm.
day for a week, and then 15 minutes a day the next week, and just see what that does for you. Maybe just do a home workout. Just
Mhm.
20 minutes of some exercise at your house. I always got everybody teases me. I call them prison workouts, but just like a little home workout sometimes will do you a world of good, get your blood flowing. I'm not saying to be fit and to be muscular or any of that stuff, but you'd be surprised at what like 20 minutes of moving will do for you, right? And that's succeeding. You just succeeded. You just spent 10, 15, 20 minutes of self-care. That's you just succeeded in that moment. and it will feel good. It will feel good for you to have done that for yourself. We do so much for so many other people in our lives. We spend most of our lives in service of others. I think a lot of us can say that. So we forget to be in service of ourselves, to ourselves, for ourselves. And I think that's really, really important. It's not selfish. It's essential to, your well-being, to your mental health, to your physical health. And I think we need to encourage people to do that more.
I completely agree. And that being said, I want to also now go back to some of the accolades I talked about in your introduction. One of them that I also find fascinating, and as we talk about mental health and physical health and how you show up, is the fact that you were one of the few actors that have appeared in multiple roles in Battlestar Galactica and in that universe, which is a rare feat and something that
Mm.
should be acknowledged and celebrated. What did playing different characters in the same world and in that same space teach you about adaptability and range, not just as an actor, but as a person and how you show up mentally and physically and all those different aspects?
I love that. I love that challenge so much because I love creating characters. I have a very overactive imagination, and I love creating characters. I like creating characters that are very different from one another. Battlestar Galactica was just good fortune. I was the audition reader for the miniseries, and I got along really well with Michael Reimer, who's a director and a producer. And he said, well, I just want to give you a role. You're fun and you're great. And so they gave me the role of the armistice officer at the very beginning. What you see is this old man at the very beginning of the miniseries, the first person you see. Um, Originally, we shot that in 10-year increments. So I aged from 30, 40 to 50. But in the end, they only used the old guy in the edit, and which is just me and old man prosthetics. And me and my dear friend to this day, Patricia Helfer, had this iconic scene at the beginning. But because I was in old man makeup, Michael Reimer was like, I bet we could probably bring you back. And no one will know. And we did. And I played Charlie Connor. And that was super fun. And I have this sort of like dubious distinction of being the only non-Cylon to play multiple roles on Battlestar Galactica. And then I went even further where when they did the spinoff, they did a show called Caprica, and no Battlestar Galactica actors were allowed to be on Caprica. But I got this call from Eric Stoltz. We had a mutual friend, and he was just adamant that he needed me to play this guy. And I was like, but I can't. So he's like, we'll figure out a look, we'll figure out a thing. And so I just shaved my head. I did, grew my beard, and I just did everything. I changed my body type. I did everything I could to make Diego worlds apart from Charlie as best I could. And I gave him a different voice. And I had such a blast doing that. It was a real confidence booster for me. And later I did a TV series called Deadly Class that Rick Remender, who's one of my favorite comic book writers, wrote. And similarly, I played a character at the beginning, and he was supposed to die or be gone, and we were just having such a blast that I was just joking with Rick about, like, wouldn't it be funny if this guy keeps popping up in the kid's mind, like kind of haunts him, you know. And I ended up playing like 4 or 5 different roles. At one point I had long dreads. At another point I shaved my head into like the Dr. Phil horseshoe. I had a big mustache, and they gave me a fat suit. And then there was another one where I played I was like this long haired, big bearded Jesus looking homeless guy. Like, I had to play all of these different characters with all of these different voices, and it was just, and you only know if it's like such a
Mhm.
brilliant Easter egg. Be like, wait a second, all those guys are that same guy. And character actors are my favorite actors. It's in my bio. I'm that guy from that show. Because when I watch a show and I'm like, oh my God, it's that guy. Oh my God, it's that woman. I know at the very least they're going to be great. I'm going to be drawn to watching them. And you don't always know their names. But if that's like my legacy as an actor is to be that guy that you like. You just know, oh, I like that guy. You don't have to know my name. I'll be so happy with that.
One thing that, as you were talking about being in different characters in the same movie and what that means, what that has meant to you and how cool you found it, is I recently watched the Eddie Murphy documentary on Netflix, and he talks about the fact that in a few of his movies he played like every character. And people had no idea. And I'm blanking on the one movie. It was like the Fat Albert, I think, movie, or I forget which one. But he was every single character in that whole entire movie. And he was like, no one knew. Like people was like, oh, that Jewish guy in the barber shop. Like, where did you find
Mm-hmm.
that guy? You're gonna really help his career take off. And he's like, that was me. And they're like, wait, what? And he's like,
Yeah.
yeah, prosthetics and a different, tone and voice and demeanor, and you can be different things. So that definitely reminded me that from that, as well as like how you show up and you can be different things to different people without people connecting the dots.
I was a huge Eddie Murphy fan growing up. Still am a big Eddie Murphy fan, and a giant Robin Williams fan. And to me, those guys were chameleons. Eddie especially. Like I think he's also really underrated as a dramatic actor. I think he's phenomenal. In fact, my Eddie Murphy story goes so deep. I remember when I was a teenager, he was on a talk show. It's probably like Arsenio Hall or something, and he was asked, what was your fallback plan? Like if comedy and acting didn't work out, like what was your fallback plan? Like, were you going to be a teacher? What was it? And he said, I never gave myself a fallback plan because it would give me something to fall back on. And I thought at that time, I was like, you're brilliant, Eddie Murphy. That's the deal. I was like 14 or something. I was like, that's it. No fallback plan. Well, cut to me being homeless, living on the streets of Vancouver, going like, screw you, Eddie Murphy. I should have had a fallback plan. But he wasn't wrong. I was so motivated to succeed in spite of the situations I found myself in that I didn't worry, that I knew I was young enough and able enough to get out of that situation. I just had to work a little harder. I just had to hustle my way out, and I did. And I was really lucky because had a, I was never had that belief like this is it, my life sucks, it's over, I'm stuck here, and I'm gonna die here on the streets. It definitely was that was motivating to keep pushing into. I don't come from money, I don't
Mhm.
come from any of that stuff. So I'm a blue collar kid, and hard work is really familiar to me. And I'm not afraid of hard work. And I knew if I could just work harder than the next guy, that I had a shot, and I knew I had a talent. Um, I knew I was a storyteller from a really young age. I knew the foundation of what I am is a creator and a storyteller. And so I used that as a sort of my motivation. And I just chose to really believe that that was true and that was what I was meant to do. And here we are.
And that being said as well, so many of us go through, as we kind of talked about earlier, those ups and downs in life. And when you're trying to grow personally, professionally, and go to that next level, or even like break out into this space, sometimes it can be that feeling of nonstop rejection, or you're trying to move it forward and you're just getting stalled out or pushed backwards. So for you, using the example you just mentioned of living out of your car and being homeless, like what got you to say mentally, even on those bad days, because we all have bad days, um, okay, no, like this isn't going to stop me. Was there something you made sure you would do or put your mind to a certain space when that started to creep in?
I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot of poetry and I had a journal. I wrote a lot, and I sort of like escaped, and I read a lot. I would find books, and I just sort of used those things to escape and imagine, and to sort of to motivate me. And look, it's hard because you get out of those situations, but you still go dark, right? You still have those dark thoughts, and you still have these moments. I remember a moment in my career where you're talking you when you talked about the rejection. It is really, really hard, the rejection in this industry, and my kids dip their toes into this world, and I'm just like, oh God, please do like something else, because the rejection hurts a lot. And I remember getting to a really dark place, and I kept saying to everybody, I'm so tired of having to prove myself to strangers. I'm so tired of having to prove myself. Every time I walk into the audition room, I feel like they want me to prove something to them. And I had that became this like really negative outlook. And I was going through, a divorce at the time. And things were just like getting away from me. And a casting director pulled me aside, Maureen Webb, and we became very good friends after this. But and I love her so much for this. But she pulled me aside and she said, "You can't do this. You can't. You have to stop bringing your dark cloud into the room with you. Nobody wants to work with a giant dark cloud. Like, I don't care if you have to pretend that you're happy, but these folks, these producers, they want to hand you their baby and hope that once you've had their baby for a while, you're going to hand it back. It's going to be healthy and happy and fine, and maybe a little bit better than when they gave it to you in the first place. Nobody's going to hand this dark, depressed figure their baby, and it just really, it struck me. And she's like, just put a smile on your face when you walk in the room. Just start there. And it's kind of true, right? Like, if we're feeling kind of shit, like, just try to throw that smile on for a second and see if it fits. Like, this world's not easy, um, but it doesn't have to be so hard all the time. You know, just sometimes my friend is a first AD, and she's the best quote. She's like, "Listen, sometimes you just got to suck it up and then go cry in your car like a real professional." And it's true in this business, you know?
Mm-hmm. And it's also one of those things, if y- we all create habits and patterns. So if we forget to do something as simple as smile throughout the day, it's easier to not smile the next day and the next day and so on and so forth. So I think, practicing that, even in those dark times, I remember there was a stretch of time, um, us being stationed in Juneau, Alaska, in like when I we moved out here in the summer, so bright days, lots of things to do. And we got here the end of June. And in September, I went and traveled and did speaking engagements and different things for a month. I came back and you go from like summer and like you're adjusting new space to now you're adjusting and it's dark early on and I had visited family and now, they're so far away and this like quick mind adjustment play that it does on you. And there were like quite a few days where I was just grumpy. And my boyfriend like came over to me one day and he just starts tickling me. And I'm like, "What are you doing? Like what? Like stop!" Right? And I'm like hysterically laughing. I'm just like, "Stop tickling me." And he's like, "I'm gonna get you to laugh." Right? And you have to laugh. You have to find the joy. Like you're going through, but you have to laugh. He's like, "This is how I can make sure you laugh." And then it like became a thing where, in these very random moments, we could be sitting on the couch and I could be look stressed and he'll just like start tickling me. I'm like, "Knock it off. Don't do it." But it's coming and it brings that smile and you laugh, you have joy, and then it's like, okay, and you get balanced again and it keeps moving, but it's finding whatever that joy is for you and however you can make sure it shows up and making sure it delivers in
And
everyday
it's
life.
really nice to have that kind of support in your
Mhm.
life as well, and it's good for us to do that for others. It's good for us to support others, in that way as well.
Yeah.
It's again another cliche, everybody's fighting a battle we know nothing about, right? So
Mhm.
it's good to remember
Yeah.
that, and I also, I'm a person that believes it takes way less energy to be kind than it does to be angry or hateful or upset. Being upset all the time is exhausting, but being kind can be infectious. Being kind, it's you can spread both things equally, by the way. You can spread your anger and your bad mood. Like we've all been in a room where things are great, everybody's happy, everybody's good, and one person can walk in that room and shift the tone. And if one person walks in that room with that dark cloud, you just feel it. You just do. We can't help it. We're all just like, oh, and then we kind of like shrink to that. But if someone
Mhm.
walks in the room and they're just a beacon of positivity, we're like, you're just drawn to that person. Where the person who's negative, you're like afraid, you just, oh, I don't really want to spend time with that person. But the person who's like this positive beacon, you're drawn to that. I want to experience this person. This person makes me feel really good. Um, I like to try to do that. I like to at least try to be that sort of beacon of positivity when I have the energy for it. Obviously, you don't always have the energy to do that. But when I do, I'll recharge my social battery. I'm someone, I believe they call it now like an introvert. I'm like an introvert who can do extroverted things. But I live in a small town in the mountains, so this is where I come to recharge, and so that I can be a good friend and a good partner and a good father when I'm out in the world, when I'm out around everybody, and when I'm communicating and having these great conversations like I'm having with you. I make sure to, conserve my energy and my social battery so that I can be present and authentic in these kinds of exchanges. And it's not always easy, and sometimes you have to fake it a little bit. But you find a way to get there in the end.
And it's also, as someone who's currently living with mountains all around us and the snow caps and, you know, being able to walk into the wilderness and, you're walking and you're on this like, okay, I'm going to walk for X amount of time and then turn around or whatever it might be. And then you stop and you realize, okay, I'm here, and you start looking around and you have this view and you realize, like, look where I am and look at everything around me. And it really gets you centered so many times. Like, I didn't grow up hiking. I didn't grow up, I skied some being in the Northeast. Um, I was a swimmer. I did stuff inside. But, being with my boyfriend and then also where we're currently stationed, it's like, how can you not take these opportunities and grow, but also realize like the beauty that's around you every single day?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's healthy to be reminded that we are tiny.
Hmm.
We're just tiny little blips at the end of the day. You know, um, it's this, we face these seemingly insurmountable odds, and it's really, really important to find the joy and the tranquility where you can,
Hmm.
because it all goes by so damn fast.
Well, on that note, Ryan, I cannot believe our time is up, and I feel like we could continue to talk about so much, but I want to thank you, Ryan, for all of your insight today.
Oh, thank you so much. Maybe we can do it again one day. It'd be fun. It's been a real pleasure. It's been a nice conversation. Thank you.
I truly enjoyed it, and I feel like, again, like I said, there's so many other avenues we could go down and talk about. Um, but a few of our key takeaways from today's conversation, and I'm going to start off with a challenge for everyone. What is your Easter egg that you are leaving in different moments of your life? Like Ryan with his knives or different pieces he brings on set and how he shows up, whether that's in different character. What are the song, right, that he talked about in the movie he was a part of? What are those little Easter eggs you can bring into your life? As well as momentum can be hard, but start by accomplishing one task. So momentum and motivation, it can get hard, but start with that one task. Like Ryan mentioned he makes his bed every day. He has his cup of coffee and sits down and makes sure he's present and then goes through emails. What are those tasks you can be doing and the things that will then help you be even more motivated to do the next thing and the next thing and be present? As well as that goes into the next takeaway of celebrating those small victories, whether it is the audition, whether it is the role, whether it's making your bed every day, right? Having certain conversations with other people, giving back. Celebrate every single win and acknowledge those. Acknowledge the wins and then acknowledge the hard parts too. I think in this conversation, we very much dove into the things that we've celebrated and how to celebrate and move that needle, but we've also acknowledged those hard parts in our days, in life, and they go hand in hand sometimes to help you move forward, as well as be in service to yourself and for yourself. And I love how Ryan brought that up because I think so many times we look at goals, we look at giving for others, showing up in these different rooms, but we forget that it's not just about showing up, giving for others, it's also about showing up and giving for ourselves. And then lastly, is stop bringing your dark cloud into a room. So with that, I'm going to give a second challenge today is start smiling. When you start to feel yourself have that dark cloud like Ryan mentioned in the story he told, have a smile. Show up and smile for 5 seconds. Start there. And you'll start to see that shift. This was a great episode with our top-notch guest, actor Ryan Robbins. Thank you for listening and have a successful day.